You'll kill you. Yeah, I might just run through that a few times to learn the song. The intro? Yeah. Not the opening, maybe? Well, you might do an intro. 3, 2 girls. Not me. You're not going to sing it?
Just jumped on a plane and paid no attention to me.
Hi folks, and welcome back to my vlog. My name's Joya, for those who are new to the channel. Today's vlog is all about roadies, or road crew as some people like to call them. So bands make it rock, but roadies make it roll. Their world is quite unique, making musicians look and sound great. But what exactly is a roadie?
Roadies look after the rigging, trucks, scaffolding, site management, pyrotechnics, lighting, video, audio, security, forklifts, ticketing, catering, backline, staging, and many more.
Let me shine a spotlight today on the true backbone of the music industry, the road crew. Now, some of the members will come from this book here by Stuart Koo, Roadies, The Secret History of Australian Rock and Roll. Great book. I'll put the link in the description on where you can get it. So Michael Gudinski, Roger Davies and Michael Chugg, all well-known Australians, all started out as road crew. Kevin Borridge serenaded the roadie Swampy in his truck after a show one night, and that song ended up being a hit for Kevin. Australian Crawl sang about road crew. Sadly, but also in an emotional kind of tribute, Cold Chisel wrote a song called Letter to Allen to honour the two road crew, Alan Dallow and Billy Rowe, who sadly died in a truck accident while working on Swanee's tour.
When it's time for your reflection.
Venues were small scale when the Australian music scene really took off in the late 60s. Acts like Doug Parkinson would load their gear themselves into a Holden station wagon, and if it didn't fit, they would just leave it behind. During that period, the late 60s, the Easy Beats, the Masters Apprentices, acts like that would often, do the work themselves, and it wasn't really uncommon for those kind of acts to do more than one show a day, so it was quite hard work. Now, by the 70s, Australian festivals, the very first one was at Ourimbah here on the Central Coast, and the Victorian Sunbury Festival, they really showed how important it was to pay attention to equipment and personnel that was needed. Staging directors like Mary Took, he, understood that, and he was quoted as saying that, we went from dragging gear ourselves to needing trucks and guys who knew how to wire up a PA without killing themselves. So the audio and lighting support people, the companies like Jans and Johnston, Claire, they were all really, really important in supporting the live music scene. So look, without the crew, shows simply just didn't happen. For example, at Ourimbah, it rained, the power dropped out, the mics failed, but somehow the road crew made it work. 2 years later at the festival at Sunbury, they had roadies building towns from nothing, the power grids, the stages, full light rigs, and there's a fantastic book you should get about Sunbury. I have made a small vlog about it. Just really amazing photos and information. Over time, the role of roadies did become more professionalised, and a lot of them just developed really specialised skills and a deeper understanding of the technical aspects of live performances. The industry was new and it was mostly unregulated in that late 60s and 70s period, and it was 1970 that I feel was a big one for the industry. So the drinking age in Australia had been lowered from 21 to 18, and the promoter, Bill Joseph, he kind of set about, introducing bands in those large spaces around Melbourne. It's like the Village Green in Mulgrave, the White Horse, I think was another one. And acts like Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs really, or just Billy Thorpe on his own, did contribute to that runaway train that was pub rock culture.
From Toowoomba to Cooma overnight or something, and have no sleep, have done a show, drive there, and then as soon as they get there set up, ready to do a show with no mistakes, we'd be paying out a fortune.
These three guys have been with us a long time at the moment, and it's very rare that you find people who stay part of our road crew because of the amount of work that's involved.
We don't pay a fortune to these guys, and we can't. You know, it's just all there is to it. You know? I mean, if we had to pay them what they were actually, what they'd have to get.
Hours they worked.
Be careful, man.
Yeah,
Be careful what you're saying.
Well, you know, what they'd have to get still, you know, they'd be earning a lot more money than we would be.
OHS, it was basically non-existent. Drugs and alcohol kept a lot of crew awake. There were no breathalyzers in the day. There were shady deals and even shadier promoters, and a lot of musicians and crew often did get ripped off. There were a lot of positives though. It was fun. It was a great way to see the country. A lot of the time the road crews would kind of ease that long travel on the road and stop at roadhouses and yarn and just rest for a bit.
A nameless town somewhere in outback Australia. The 3 men in the truck have been driving since early morning. They'll be on their feet till midnight. It's an 18-hour day, and they'll keep up that pace for 9 months out of 12.
As for the tools of the trade, it was very primitive, basic kind of stuff. And interestingly, I learnt that many Australians like to build their own stuff. So the 70s and 80s, it was a really busy time. And it was about the mid-80s when electronic developments started to appear. And as a result, less people were needed, there were less venues, and so it kind of started to become a lot more competitive.
We've got so many people that I can't really name them all, but really, let's give some praise to the crew.
This is not in any particular order. Some from the 70s, 80s, 90s, some from more recent years. I've kind of plucked a few here and a few there. So if I haven't included you, put your name in the comments. There were too many to mention. So Cole Joy's mate Jim Doyle, he was apparently the first roadie in Australia. I'm not sure, but I'll go with that. I'm going to also, just wanted to mention Wayne Swampy Jarvis as probably one of the most respected road crew members. He was the first real professional road crew member. He worked with the La-Di-Dahs, went on to Susie Quattro, Status Quo, and Michael Chugg said after learning of Wayne's passing that Swampy was a backbone to him for decades. He was a character who will never be replaced, he said. So let's talk about road crew that worked for ACDC. For me, the most interesting one was Tana. So I have created a vlog where I talked to Tana, so look out for that one. Now, their very first gig, ACDC in Sydney, was in 1974 at Checkers, and that was due to the efforts of Ray Arnold and Alan Kissack. Apparently, they convinced the owner to book them, and the owner actually thought that they were too loud, so he kept unplugging the sound, but Ray and Alan just simply turned it back on. Ralph Bush, he was the bus driver and he kept gear working for ACDC. There was Colin Tate, John Darcy, Steve McGrath and Pat Picket. In fact, Steve was the guy that Mark Evans talks about in his book Dirty Deeds that introduced Mark Evans to ACDC and told him that they needed a bass player. In that book, actually, and I think in Clinton Walker's book, Pat Picket tells a story where he shared a room with Bon Scott in Tasmania and woke up one morning to see the real whole lot of Rosie sleeping atop of Bon Scott. So I've mentioned Tana before. This is her book, and she was the world's first female roadie. Get your mitts on this. It's fantastic. It's just a really interesting read. So Phil Eastick, he was also a road crew for ACDC, but also for Hush. And there is a documentary that I found that kind of, opens your eyes to what it was like. A little bit embarrassing watching it now. Phil actually remembers the Hell's Bell in ACDC's gigs being a real pain due to the weight and the lack of support.
Head roadie is Philip Eastick, 23, former law student. He works the sound.
He'll never be blue. You have no
Philip's brother Mike, 18, special effects and lights.
Gerry Georgettis, he was a sole crew member for the La-Di-Dahs. He worked for bands like Cold Chisel. I think he was with them from 79 to 83. Later on went to some very cool events like Lollapalooza in America. Though sadly, Gerry, tragically, he suicided in what seemed to be a breakdown. It's just incredibly sad, and I think that this might have been the reason why, you know, the music industry really, you know, stood up and took notice and started, you know, initiatives like ARCA and Support Act. Greg Weaver, musician Paul Kelly doesn't hold back with praise for the late and wonderful Greg in a video that I found.
Greg Weaver, front of house guy and tour manager, worked with him for many years. We lost him suddenly to a heart attack 3 years ago. He had lots of funny sayings, but I guess the most important one was, no problems, only solutions.
Neil Finn, he dedicates a wonderful speech at the Arias to his road crew.
They're our road crew. We've got so many people that I can't really name them all, but really, let's give some praise to the crew. Everybody that's been in a band or been on the road knows how important they are and how much, how unsung they are most of the time.
Ron Clayton, he was one of the few road crew members who stayed with the one band, the Ted Mulry Gang. This book is fantastic. It's actually quite funny and lots of stories. For example, you know, the need for permits to carry musical equipment over some state borders in Australia. Helping bikini-clad girls often on the stage at outdoor concerts, the 2SM one in Sydney. In fact, if you watch the film clip for Jump in the Car, you'll see Ron in that. So, yeah, it's quite funny. And his website, tedmulry.com, you really should check it out. It's a fantastic source of information, not just about the band, but just, yeah, the whole culture, and the photos are great. It's really interesting. So let's move along to some other crew from that time. Yogi, Graham Harrison, he remembers transporting a very young Stuart Fraser into a gig at the Bondi Lifesaver in a lighting road case. And the reason for that, Stuart was only 15, he was underage, and he was about to play with the band Feather. Greg Horrocks, he was nicknamed Bear, and you'll notice that there's a lot of nicknames for most of these guys. He crewed with a lot of guys, a lot of bands, including Rose Tattoo and Ted Mulry, and I found some fantastic photos of Bear, a lot of them in Ron's book, so yeah, it's really good for that. Steve Alberts, he was called Pineapple, and he remembers staying at a hotel in Bondi when he saw Stevie Wright climbing down the side with bed sheets, and yeah, I think Ray was put there to try and stop, you know, Stevie from taking drugs. And yeah, apparently he was 12 feet from the bottom, and Ray was calling out to him, you know, jump, you little prick, I dare you. So yeah, that would have been quite a hoot to see. Ray Maguire, he remembers having to cope with boredom and often pranking people. And one time they didn't like this particular motel they were dealing with, and so they sent chickens into the hotel room. And another time I think he said he sent a herd of cattle. Yeah, very strange. Kerry Cunningham, he used to steal Bon Scott's motorbike in the early days of ACDC as they realised that Bon, booze and bikes were a really bad combination, and yeah, apparently Bon was none the wiser. Sean Hackett, his nickname was Motley. He did start in the business when it was that Cowboys kind of era in the 80s. He did find himself working for Kiss as their lighting designer for 16 years. Oh, I didn't know that. And yeah, that just, yeah, really blew me away. Fantastic.
My real name's Sean Hackett, but everybody calls me Motley. I'm the lighting designer for Kiss. I do all the design the lights, co-design the set with our production manager Robert Long, who's our production designer. And the two of us bounce drawings backwards and forwards until we find something that fits.
Geoff Lloyd says that being a roadie was one of the greatest things he's ever done, and after that career, he was actually Michael Gudinski's driver for 17 years. Mike Emerson's got a really hairy story. By good fortune, he was able to change the loading time when they arrived at a Newcastle hotel to 11 a.m, and this act actually saved his life and others, as everyone was told to evacuate due to a massive earthquake that hit the city. Sadly, John O'Shaughnessy, road crew member, he sadly died.
Former roadie Patrick Murray was released from hospital the day before the concert after being pulled from the rubble of the Workers' Club. He'd been there setting up for a split ends and crowded house concert that was to go on that night.
Raymond Hawkins, I've spoken about Ray in my previous preview vlog, so check that out. And there's great footage of Ray talking about his time with the Angels. in that documentary, Kicking the Door Down. That's a great documentary. You should watch it.
There was never a drug left unsniffed or unsmoked or undrunk. It's just the nature of someone like me. On innumerable occasions, really I should have died, and I don't know how I didn't.
Kevin Borich, he was pleasantly surprised when a roadie tapped him on the shoulder at a concert in Melbourne and said to him, hey, Santana wants you. It was in 1977 at Calder Raceway. It was a big, I think Fleetwood Mac played there, and he was on the bill as well, but he'd put away his gear, and he ended up playing Santana's Les Paul guitar. How amazing. Howard Freeman, he says that the rock and roll lifestyle of the 70s and 80s was partially to blame for why so many roadies died young or were struggling later in life. He said the pressure was relentless and people abused substances, and eventually it took its toll on a lot of road crew. Tony Murphy, he says it was a long, hard road with few benefits, but getting paid to set up live music and do lighting or stage for bands for 43 years was just epic. So he was a rigger and stage guy at the Sydney Entertainment Centre, the State Theatre, the Capitol, the Hordern, the Sydney Cricket Ground. Yeah, he did everything. Tony Bryan, sound engineer, he said that in his early days he actually worked for free, and some of the acts that he has worked for include Parkway Drive, including overseas, UMI, Birds of Tokyo, and Jimmy Barnes. And he says that his three most important tools are a USB stick, gaffer tape, and Kes Kesby. So he's a great, sound guy. There is a website, CX Network, that has some fantastic articles about all this stuff, so I'll put the link in the description. So Kesby, David Rudder, Jeff Pavey, all, marvellous road crew specialists working for all kinds of bands. There was the Human Nature Residency in Las Vegas. Yeah, just really well-respected men. Ant Milne, he's one of Australia's most in-demand drum and guitar techs. He's worked for The Living End, The Butterfly Effect, Tash Sultana, and he does production managing and stage managing, and again, very well respected. I wanted to mention Matt Doherty. I found a clip where he talks about helping bands load equipment at local venues for no money at all, and in 92, the Big Day Out people asked him to work for him. He's also done, Michael Jackson and U2 and other fabulous artists.
This industry's often been seen as not a real job. You're working with bands and stuff like that. Well, that's not true. There's many technical roles here and very, very highly paid people.
Billy McCartney, he started young working for greats like the Rolling Stones, while most other road crew was still apprentice stage. Back in Australia, he decided he'd tour with, Ted Mulry Gang in 76, the Dingoes, and then ultimately set up the Southeast Asian operations in Thailand for the Paul Dainty Corporation. Laurie Quigley, he started with the band The Sports and Mondo Rock. He moved overseas and he was front of house for Supertramp and, nearly 30 years with the band Whitesnake. Ray Field, he's a roadie who worked a lot in the late 80s and the 90s, with breaks in between. To the present time, he is still working. Bands like Candy Harlots, The Radiators, Stevie Wright, Meatballs, The Hard-Ons, The Lime Spiders. He does say that production for the bands in his circle became smaller or has become smaller due to a lack of increase in fees that are paid to bands and crew. So instead of having 3- and 4-man crews, the norm now is 1 or 2 guys with a small van load of gear, and he says working for much the same pay as 1985. Stumpy, the roadie that Richard Clapton references in this book, he tells a story about his nickname Ralph, Richard Clapton's nickname Ralph. Apparently Stumpy kept calling him that, and then when he asked him why was he doing it, he said, "You're Ralph, the hairy English sheepdog, the one from the cartoon." So that kind of stuck, and even Michael Chugg started calling him that. Mick Mazzone, very sadly, Mick passed away this year, and he was so liked, so well respected, worked so hard as well. I remember Mick actually in the late 80s or early 90s. I used to see him everywhere, and he ended up forming the company Mighty Management and had people like Ian Moss, the Radiators, And more recently, he was working for the Hoodoo Gurus, so very sad news that he passed. Falcon, Matthew Misford, bands like Spy vs. Spy, The Screaming Jets, The Angels, many years with Susie Quattro. Falcon says that music is just in his blood. Even though he doesn't play, he just has a huge passion for his job and just absolutely loves it, and he's a great bloke. Robert Miles, he's described by Mark Seymour in this book, 13-Ton Theory, as a genius, a builder of sound, and the book's got a chapter in it called The Crab, and it even talks about Mark Seymour working as a roadie for the birthday party, obviously before his career took off. Greg Clark, the late and great Greg Clark, sound guy. He worked for Billy Thorpe from 1997 to 2006. Saw him everywhere in the 90s. He did so many gigs and again, very well respected. His benefit concert was great as well. Bruce Jackson, he worked with Elvis Presley for 6 years on sound. I've only just found that out and I was, completely flabbergasted. So there's a book called On the Road with Elvis. It is sold out, but Bruce's brother told me that there's another book going to print soon, which is similar to that. It's fantastic. And look, Bruce is just the greatest achiever in Australian pro audio. You should click the website, brucejackson.com.au. It's fantastic.
What's your feedback, Bruce? I'll send you back to Australia in a kangaroo pouch.
Howard Page, he had, great success, and you can actually hear Howard on the mixing desk at that New Year's Eve Opera House concert in 1979, berating the audience after some morons just threw cans on stage that ended up hitting people, including Doc Neeson and Chris Bailey of the Angels. Just, very sad ending to that concert.
I have to satisfy you, idiots. I have to satisfy you have totally ruined the show. Thank you very much. Stop throwing anything. That's it. Thank you.
Look, a lot of people, stayed in the job, some specialised, some quit, some are still working today. Really successful people like Roger Davies and Mel Took and Julius Grafton. Actually, Julius has got a great book out. It's called This Could Be Serious. I highly recommend it. I'm in the process of reading it now, and just lots of great tales. So the industry has changed for the better, thank goodness. There are, better safety protocols. There are plans now that exist for load-ins and load-outs. Whether there are union contracts or not, there are standardised practices everywhere now. It is the norm. Just a roadie, the reality is that most are a highly skilled group of workers with superior technical know-how and great dedication to their work and their artists. Australian crews are actually revered globally. I've read that everywhere, and they don't have any trouble getting work with international acts. And finally, I wanted to direct you to a website called ARCA. They are the Australian Road Crew Association. The directors are Ian Peel and Adrian Anderson, and look, between them, they're just amazing. Their resumes are quite cool. And look, it's just an initiative that supports these unsung heroes that are, road crew, whether it's financially, health-wise, counselling services, well-being. Just check it out. I'll put the link in the description. It really needs to be highlighted and exposed. They also preserve the history of Australian live music because they've got this initiative called the Desk Tape Series. Highly recommended. It's fantastic. They're just live recordings made by the crew members of that sort of era, whether it was 70s, 80s. They're fantastic. So Ian Peel of ARCA, he was a road crew member from 1974 for about 10 years, and he worked for people like Olivia Newton-John, Bob Marley, Bob Dylan, the Eurythmics, Madness, and Adrian, he stage managed the Sunbury concerts and just did some fantastic work. He also worked at Premier Artists. So again, look at my description for all the information. Support Act and Crew Care, can't talk enough about them. Just everyone is so committed to improving the welfare of these crew. There are helplines. So much support is out there if people need it. And look, lastly, so many road crew members that I haven't been able to talk about because this vlog would just go on forever. What I might do is list a lot of them just in a slideshow thing so that, you know, I did look it up and I did find some of your history. I just haven't been able to include it. You know, Phil Dinesky, Kevin Wheatley, Wayne Perryman, Shane Scully, Jimmy Bostock, Jeff Merriweather, Dinny, Clint Braddick, Alan Charlton. I wanted to mention Greg Butt, Athol Maxwell Davis, Scott Mullane, Ian McDonald, Malcolm McEwen and Steve Wright because I know them from the Screaming Jets and the Angels and all kinds of bands that I still see. Gary Maddox, I wanted to mention him, sound engineer extraordinaire. Look, so many. Jimmy Murray, Bartley Malocco, Colin Baldwin, Phil Dracoulis. I could sit here forever. So if you haven't been mentioned or you're not listed, I'd love to hear from you in the comments, and if you've got a little story or even just a wave hello, that would be great. So I hope I've done it justice. I know that when I was reading Stuart's book, there are so many more stories in that, and he too wanted to include so many more, but yeah, there's honestly a documentary probably should be made. So Screen Australia, where are you? Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so that you can hear of all my future vlogs that I will be making. Cheers.
Now the seats are all empty. Let the roadies take the stage. Pack it up and tear it down. They're the first to come and the last to leave, working for that minimum wage. They'll set it up in another town. Tonight the people were so fine. They waited there in line, and when they got up on their feet, they made the show. And that was sweet, but I can hear the sound of slamming doors.